This is lesson 3.4, Solving Systems by Elimination. This is a grade 10 applied lesson, so if you are in grade 10 applied, this lesson is for you. The learning goals of this lesson are, you've noticed we've been finding the point of intersection of two lines, so the learning goal of this lesson is to find the point of intersection of two lines by using the method of elimination. So far we've used the method of graphing to find the point of intersection of two lines. We've used the method of substitution, and the final one is elimination. So graphing, we remember what that one was. Substitution was algebra, and so is elimination. They're just two different strategies. So this is the last one that we're going to learn. So just like in substitution, we had a few steps. We also have some steps in elimination. Now, what's important is that you take out handout 3.4, Solving Systems by Elimination. This is the handout that I gave out in class. The notes, as always, are going to go along, or this lesson is going to go along with those notes. So if you take a look at the top of your notes, right underneath the learning goals, it goes through the steps of elimination. So I'm not going to even bother reading them right now. I just rewrote them here for us. I'm not going to even bother reading them right now because it's not going to make sense until we try it. So we're just going to do it step by step. So what I've done is I have written out example number 1, which is, it says solve by elimination. So solve, we know we're given two equations. So by solve, we know they're asking us to find the point of intersection. So we could go and graph these lines, find the point of intersection. Most of us hate graphing. We could also use the method of substitution, so isolate for one of these variables and then substitute it back in, do a few more substitutions and find it that way. I'm going to show you a third and final method. I used to, when I first learned it, I didn't like this method, and now I find that it's the fastest, easiest way to find the point of intersection. So let's go through step number 1. We know we've got our two equations of a line. So step number 1 says find one variable that you can make the same in both equations. Oh, sort of got cut off here. In both equations. EQN is just a short form of equation, by the way. So we're going to find one variable that we can make the same in both equations. So if we take a look here, I can say I've got a 3x and a 4x. Those are pretty different. I can make them the same, but they're a little bit difficult too. But then I see a y and a negative y. So those are very, very similar. So I think that I can make those the same. So let's go to step number 2. Once we've figured out our variable that we can make the same in both equations, step 2 says multiply one or both of the equations by numbers to make the variables match. Okay, so here I've got a plus y, and here I've got a minus y. So remember that this is just a plus 1y, and this is just a minus 1y. How can I make them the same? Well, it says in step 2 that I have to multiply one or both of the equations by a number to make the variable match. So then why don't I try this? Let me take away my arrows. First of all, just like substitution and graphing, we're going to label these. Let's label this one 1, and this one 2. So I'm going to skip right to step 2. And I'm going to say that we are going to multiply equation 2 by negative 1. And I'm going to show you what that does to the equation. So I'm going to rewrite equation number 2. So I'm going to write 4x, pens decided to stop working, here we go, minus y equals 2. And that was equation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply everything by negative 1. Now this isn't really the proper way to multiply, but I'm just going to write it like this. Or actually, what I might write it as is like this. I do times negative 1. Okay, so I'm going to erase these. Here we go. Okay, we're taking equation 2, we're multiplying by negative 1. So what we're going to do is multiply absolutely everything inside by negative 1, and let's see what happens. So I'm going to write I'm going to multiply the 4x by negative 1, that's going to turn into minus 4x. I'm going to multiply the negative y by negative 1, that's going to turn into positive y. I've got an equal sign, multiply the 2 by negative 1, is going to turn to negative 2. So this is our new equation number 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, like in substitution, forget about this one anymore. I don't even need it. So now I'm just looking at my equation number 1 and my equation number 2. And remember that in step 2, which is what we did, our goal, so we're in the step we multiply one or both of the equations by numbers to make the variables match. So they'll make those variables that we picked in step 1 match. If you notice now, there we've got a positive y and a positive y. We've got two variables that totally match. So I knew from looking at equation number 2 that if I just multiplied the whole thing by negative 1, it would turn into positive y, and now they match. So I think we're ready to go into step number 3. Step number 3 says, make sure the equations are written blah 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 x plus blah 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 y equals blah blah blah. So let's go check it. We've got x, y, equal sign, and then a number. So we are good for equation number 2, and the same thing for equation number 1. We've got x, y, equal sign, then a number. All right, step number 3 is checked. Let's do step number 4 now. Solve. Oh, so we didn't actually finish step number 3. Make sure the equations are written as something x equals something, or something x plus something y equals something, and then write one on top of the other and subtract. All right, that's what we're going to do. So we're going to write number 1 first. So this is step number 3. So I'm going to write equation number 1 first. I'm going to write 3x plus y equals 19, and that's number 1. And then I'm going to write our next one, our equation number 2, right underneath it. So I'm going to write negative 4x plus y equals negative 2. That was our equation number 2. And then step 3 says, and then subtract. Okay, so this is how you subtract. What we're going to do is, once they're written one on top of each other, write a little subtraction here. So I'm going to subtract 3x minus negative 4x. So I'm going to do 3x minus negative 4x, and that is just 3 minus negative 4 is just 7x. So I'm going to write 7x underneath here. And then I have y minus y, and that is just 0. So I've got plus 0, and that was the whole point of why we needed them to match. Then we've got 19 minus negative 2, which is 21. So here we've got actually just 7x equals 21. Let's take a look at our next step. Step 4 says, solve for the remaining variable. Well, the remaining variable that we have here is x, so we're going to solve for x. We know we have to get rid of this times 7. To get rid of this times 7, all we're going to do is divide by 7. Divide by 7 on the left, divide by 7 on the right. And we're left with x equals to 21 divided by 7 is just 3. All right, this was step 4, by the way. So I'm going to write step 4. And now we're on to our final step. Step 5 says, substitute that variable into any other equation and solve. All right, so we know the variable x equals 3. So step 5 means we're going to substitute this variable into any other equation. So I can pick any equation. Why don't I pick number 1? That's what I'm going to do. So write down 1. So here it is 3x plus y equals 19. That was equation number 1. And then we're going to write a little note that we are going to sub in x equals 3. So that's what we're going to do. Every time I see an x, I'm going to write a 3 instead. So I'm going to write 3 times 3 plus y equals 19. So I've got 3 times 3, which is 9, plus y equals 19. I want to get this 9, bring it on to the other side. So to get rid of a positive 9, I'm just going to subtract 9. Then we've got plus y equals 19. Whatever I do on the left, I have to do on the right, so minus 9. On the left, these two cross out, and we're left with y equals 10. So now I can see I'm done. I've got my x coordinate, I've got my y coordinate, so we know that our point of intersection, so I'm going to write, therefore, the point of intersection of these two lines are the point, and remember we write x first and then y, so not to forget that points are written x then comma y. So the point of intersection of these two lines is, let me change that is to is, and then we'll do bracket, x is 3, so we'll write 3, y is 10, and we are done. So just as a recap, let's take a look at our steps one last time. Step number 1 was to find a variable that we can make the same in both equations, which we chose was y. Then step number 2 is multiply one or both of the equations by numbers to make sure the variables match. So this one had a positive y, this had a negative y, so we knew if we multiplied this one by negative, it would turn positive, and that's what we did. We multiplied all of equation 2 by -1, then we put them one on top of each other and subtracted them, and we were left with 7x equals 21. Then we isolated for x and plugged that in. So let's do another example together. Alright, so now let's try example number 2. So example number 2 says, again, solve the linear system, which just means find the point of intersection. So we're given two equations. So we've got two lines, so we'll call this one number 1, this one number 2. Let's go back to our steps. Here we go. Step 1, find one variable that you can make the same in both equations. Let's see. Well, I see that I've got 4x here and x here, and I've got -2y and y here. So actually either of these I can make into the other. I can make this x into 4x by just multiplying the whole equation by 4, or I can make this y into -2y by just multiplying this entire equation by -2. So since we changed y in the last equation, why don't we change x in this one? So I'm going to take away my little highlight of y. Alright, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make the x's the same. So step number 2 says multiply one or both of the equations by numbers to make the variables match. So I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this x look like 4x. So I'm going to just, instead of rewriting it, I'm just going to make a little note that I'm going to multiply this entire equation by 4. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So underneath, I'm going to write that this is 4x plus 4y equals 6 times 4 is just 24. So this is going to be our new number 2. I'm going to cross out the other one, don't need it. And so now we've got our number 1 and our number 2, and we've got 4x matches each other. So let's go move on to step number 3 now. Step number 3 says make sure the equations are written something x plus something y equals blank, and then write one on top of the other and subtract. Okay, so I can see that's written x, y, then something, x, y, then something, so we're good. So now let's write them one on top of the other. So I'm going to write the first one, 4x minus 2y equals 6, and that was equation number 1. And then I'm going to write the second one, 4x plus 4y equals 24, and then write that this is the second one, and I can see right away that these two, when we subtract them, they're going to completely erase, which is exactly what we want. So now I'm going to subtract them. I'm going to do 4x minus 4x, well that is just 0. And then I've got -2y minus, don't forget we're subtracting here. So we've got -2y minus +4. If you put that into your calculator, that's just -2 minus 4, which is -6. We've got -6y equals 6 minus 24, which is just -18. So let's go back to our steps. We've subtracted them. Step 4 says solve for the remaining variable. Okay. So the remaining variable, because we've eliminated x from here, so the remaining variable is just y. So now we're just going to solve for it. So underneath, instead of writing 0 minus 6y, I'm just going to write minus 6y equals negative 18. We know we want to get y by itself, so how do I get rid of this times negative 6? Well, I'm just going to divide by negative 6. Divide by negative 6 on the left, divide by negative 6 on the right, and we're left with, first of all, this magical thing happens. Our 6's will cross out, and we're left with y equals negative 18 divided by negative 6, just equals 3. So we've got one coordinate, which is y equals 3, and let's do our final step. Step number 5 says substitute that variable into any other equation and solve. So why don't we sub y equals 3 into, let's say equation, it doesn't matter, let's do equation number 1. So let's just remind ourselves, what is 1? It's 4x minus 2y equals 6. So let's do that. Oops. Oh, I'm having some trouble here. 4x minus 2y equals 6. So I'm going to write 4x minus 2y equals 6. This is equation number 1. So let's sub in y equals 3. So every time I say y, I'm going to put a 3. So I'm going to write 4x minus 2, and instead of y, I'm going to write 3 equals 6. We've got 4x, negative 2 times 3 is just negative 6 equals 6. I want to get x by itself. So I see some like terms here, so let's bring the 6 over here. So we're going to write 4x minus 6. To get rid of a minus 6, we're just going to add 6 equals 6. Whatever I do on the left, I have to do on the right. And then our magical thing happens, negative 6 plus 6, those cancel each other out. We've got 4x equals 6 plus 6, which is just 12. And we're almost done now. We've got to get rid of this times 4, so we're going to divide by 4, and then we are left with, these two cross out, and on the left we're left with x equals 3. So now we've got y equals 3, and randomly, oops, oh my gosh, this thing hates me sometimes. Here we go. And we've also got x equals 3. So our point, therefore, our point of intersection is, remember we write x first and then y. So our point of intersection is 3, 3. And then we're done. Alright, even though there's a lot of steps, it's actually not so bad. I find it's a little bit easier than substitution because there's less steps to remember. So let's try one last example. If you think you're getting it, for example number 3, I want you to pause the video, try it yourself, check to make sure you get the right answer. If you're still not getting it, go ahead and watch it with me one more time. So if you're just starting the video again to check your answer, again, example number 3 says, solve by elimination. Solve must mean find the point of intersection. First things first, we always label, this one's 1, this one's 2. So that we know what we're talking about. Alright, if I go back to my steps, my step number 1 is find one variable that you can make the same in both equations. So let's take a look at y. Negative 3 and 5. There's nothing but a fraction. I would have to multiply y by a fraction to make negative 3 into 5, right? If I multiply negative 3 by 2, it's going to make 6. It's not going to make 5. So y is definitely not going to be an option because I do know I want to be multiplying by a fraction. But let's take a look at x's. So I've got 2x here and I've got 6x here. Well, I can make that 2 into a 6 by just multiplying by 3. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to multiply the entire equation by 3. So I'll rewrite it since I don't really have the room. I'm going to rewrite equation number 1. So I'm going to do 2x minus 3y equals negative 12, and that was equation number 1. And I'm going to take equation 1 and multiply everything by 3. So let's do that. So I'm going to multiply the 2x times 3, which is just 6x. Multiply negative 3y times 3, which is negative 9y, equals negative 12 times 3 is just negative 36. And now this is our new equation number 1. So I'm going to write 1. I don't need this new equation number 1. I've got this one. So I'll just box it just in case it's hard to see. So I'm my new equation number 1. I've got my already equation number 2. And we've done step 2. Now let's look at step 3. Step 3 says, just as a reminder, step 3 says make sure the equations are written in blank x plus blank y equals blank. And then write one on top of the other and subtract. So let's make sure, yep, we've got x, then y, then our number, x, then y, then our number, so we're good with that. So now let's write them one on top of the other and subtract. So we'll write the first one first. So I've got 6x minus 9y equals negative 36, and that was equation number 1. Then I'm going to subtract equation number 2, which is 6x plus 5y equals negative 8. I'm going to subtract them. So we've got 6x minus 6x, which is just 0, which is why we made them match, because we want to eliminate one of the variables, which is why it's called elimination. Then we've got negative 9y minus positive 5y, not to forget that we're subtracting here. So negative 9y minus 5y, just negative 9 minus 5, which is negative 14y, equals negative 36 minus negative 8, which is going to be negative 36 plus 8, which is just negative 28. Sorry, negative 28. And step number 4 says solve for the remaining variable. So we're going to do that. Okay. So I'm going to rewrite this as 0 minus 14y is just minus 14y equals 28. Sorry, negative 28. We got to get rid of this minus negative 14. It's multiplying against the y, so we're going to divide by negative 14 and divide by negative 14 on the right. Our magic happens, cross each other out, and we've got y equals negative 28 divided by negative 14 is just 2. Alright, that seemed good. Seemed easy. We've got one coordinate, we've got y. Step number 5, remember, is to substitute this coordinate into either of the equations. So why don't we just, I'm feeling like number 2. We're going to do that. So it doesn't matter which one, but I'm going to pick number 2. So I'm going to say sub y equals 2 into equation, and let's just say 2, but you could do it in either of them. So just a reminder, what's equation number 2? Equation number 2 is 6x minus 5y equals negative 8. Let's see if we can remember that. 6x minus 5y equals negative 8. Alright, let's plug it in. So instead of writing y, I'm going to write 2. Wherever I say y, so I'm going to write 6x minus 5. Instead of y, I'm going to write 2, because I'm subbing in y equals 2, equals negative 8. I've got 6x, negative 5 times 2 is just negative 10, equals negative 8. I see some like terms here. The 10 and the 8 are like terms, so I'm going to move this 10 onto the other side so it can be joined with the 8, its long lost friend. So we've got 6x minus 10. To get rid of a minus 10, we know we're just going to add 10. We've got equals negative 8 plus 10. On the left-hand side, magic happens. We can cross these two out. And we've got on the left 6x equals negative 8 plus 10 is just 2. And we're almost done. Now we got to get rid of this 6, and it's multiplying against the x, so we know we're going to do the opposite operation, which is divide by 6. Divide by 6 on the left, divide by 6 on the right. And magic happens. Our 6's will cross out, and on the left we're left with x, and on the right we're left with 2 over 6. If I put 2 divided by 6 into the calculator, it comes out a decimal. So let's not put it as a decimal, let's leave it as a fraction. But if we're going to leave it as a fraction, we have to make sure that it's in the lowest terms. So I'm going to look for a number that can divide into the top and the bottom. And if you take a look, you can see 2 can divide into the top and the bottom. So I'm going to divide the top by 2 and divide the bottom by 2. So I'm left with x equals 2 divided by 2, just 1, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. Done. Done, 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 done. So let's take a look at what we found. We know that the x-coordinate of the point of intersection is 1 over 3, and the y-coordinate of the point of intersection is 2. So now we can write our conclusion. So we're going to write, therefore, the point of intersection of this linear system is the point So to conclude, congratulations, you have mastered all 3 ways of finding the point of intersection. There's probably one way that you hate, and that's okay, and there's probably one way that you would prefer. And the point is that there's lots of different ways to get the same answer, and you will get to choose. When a question asks you to pick your own way, you can pick any way that you want to do it. So just as a reminder, what we learned in this lesson, so our learning goal was that we were learning to find the point of intersection of 2 lines using the method of elimination. And remember, we call it elimination because we are eliminating a variable by subtracting them away. And then from that, we can find one variable, sub it in, and we can find our point of intersection. So just as a reminder, we have learned how to do this through graphing, through substitution, and through elimination. So now it's important to practice this one, especially this lesson in substitution, because it's a whole lot of algebra. And so please turn to the sheet right behind that's attached to this lesson and try just a few of the circled problems. The answer sheet is also connected to it, so please make sure that you're getting the right answer. If you have any questions, please come find me.